So I've been spending a lot of time lately kind of reorganizing my book collection. And it's caused me to go off and say, hey, look, I've got a lot of these things. How do I keep them organized? So I started a Instagram page to keep all my book covers on. So when I'm actually out at a bookstore, I don't buy a duplicate. But I wanted to take a minute to talk about this one. Stephen King's The Dark Half. Uh, Stephen King is the thing that every Gen X, the author who every Gen Xer read a little too young. Um, Depending on what age group inside Gen X you came up with, you found one of his books somewhere before you should have, because it scared the crap out of you in one way or the other, and either made you a lifelong reader or scared the crap out of you and gave you nightmares, one or the other. But for me, I found it was one of those things that I was already sort of a avid reader. It found it to be one of those things that sort of drove that spike in and kept it going. The Dark Half is an interesting book. I think it's one of his better books because it tells kind of a story that sort of was personal to him. So early in his career, the publishers were still unsure if the market could support a writer who would put out more than one book a year, and oh my gosh, if you put out two, does it dilute the brand or whatever, right? Whereas we now know that Stephen King could put out a book a week and nobody cares, and it's weird because in that same time frame, Isaac Asimov was putting out a book like every 3 weeks and nobody seemed to care. But he was sci-fi; it's a different genre, yeah. So anyway, the argument was, can he do it? So he started writing under the pen name Bachman, and you know, part of it was interesting to him also because I think he was sort of one or two books away from making Richard Bachman an every time out the door bestseller, which I think he was very proud of. But this book was sort of derived from that in that somebody figured out he was Richard Bachman, and there weren't many people that knew it. It was very tightly held secret at his publisher, probably his agent, his family. There weren't many. It was probably 30. But one of the things that you discover in life is that if 30 people know it, 300 people know it. And if 300 people know it, it's no longer a secret. So somebody figured out it was him. Somebody tried to bribe him into keeping the secret. Oh, unless you pay me, so much, I'm going to tell everybody it's you. So he's like, all right, screw it. Went public with it. Broke the seal and said, hey, I'm Bachman. And then he wrote this book called The Dark Half, about a creative writing professor, English professor, who uh, wrote horror books under a pen name because you couldn't have anybody think that you wrote those trashy novels if you're this classical literature guy. But of course, he made a bunch of money on the horror side, and he wasn't making any on the lit side, so he kept doing it. And so they held this sort of fake burial for the pen name at one point, and I think King kind of took it to heart, and this book kind of derived from that scandal, and he turned it into an interesting horror book. And I will tell you that having read a bunch of Stephen King books, he will occasionally take somebody out in them with a vengeance. And what he did to the person who intended to blow the whistle in the book was not pretty. It just wasn't pretty. So yeah, and it is one to read. If you want to see somebody get beaten to death with their own wooden leg, this is the place to go. At the time they were referred to as wooden legs because generally they were wooden, and now they're of course prosthetics, and they're much better done than they were even when this was written. But I think this is one, if you like horror and you have not read it, read this one. It was very personal to Mr. King, and wow, it does deliver. So I was trying to figure out how to fit all that into the length of a tweet, and I couldn't figure out how to do it, so I just went ahead and did a video. And I hope everybody has a great day. Please continue to read fiction, read nonfiction, read whatever floats your boat. Pick up a book. It does exercise parts of your brain that don't get exercised any other way. And brain exercise is just as important as body exercise. Without it, your brain kind of decays. So, everybody have a great day, and we will see you soon.